I do not own the rights to this music. Hello, and welcome to Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron. Sunday School lesson for Sunday, October the 13th, 2024. Our reference material for the Sunday School Summary is based upon the International Sunday School Lesson Series as published by the Sunday School Publishing Board. We are discussing Worship in the Covenant Community as the title of the Fall 2024 Lesson Series, and the Covenant Community Lesson Series discusses worship practices as a grateful response to the covenant relationship that God initiated with Abraham. The Worship in the Covenant Community Lesson Series is categorized into three groups of lessons, and we are in Unit 2. And we are discussing the Psalms of the Old Testament. The title of our third lesson in the Unit 2 Fall 2024 Lesson Series is titled, We Are in a Tight Spot. And that is when we are in that condition which only God can deliver us from. And we recognize that God is the God of Israel and that God has been faithful. The key verse comes from Psalm chapter 22, verse 1, and it reads, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? Now, the title of today's lesson, we're in a tight spot from the book of Psalms, and as we talked about, the book of Psalms is a collection of 150 ancient songs. Many of the Psalms were written by King David. The psalm address a multitude of different subjects to address the range of human emotions, spiritual needs, and conditions of life. These are glad songs which praise God, and sad psalms or sad prayers to God. Psalms of faith in times of trouble. The psalm today is Psalm 22, a sad prayer of feelings forsaken or abandoned and forgotten by God. This is another of the Psalms that is attributable to King David and speaks to his condition of severe loneliness and isolation during one of the darker periods in his life, which brings us to today's lesson. There are two summary lesson points for today. Cry of the Forsaken, and that's from Psalms chapter 22, verses 1 through 5, and Trust in the Lord, and that's from Psalms chapter 22, verses 6 through 11. The passages for the lesson today revolve around the key words faith, wisdom, and forsaken. We know that faith is the complete trust, assurance, belief, or confidence in God. It is the faith of David to trust God in spite of the dire circumstances in which he finds himself, in today's lesson. Wisdom is the ability to apply experience, knowledge, and understanding to produce good judgment. It is the wisdom to recognize that God has kept him in his care from birth thus far, and God rescued his ancestors in the past, and that only God can help him in today's lesson. Forsaken is to forsake means to abandon, to desert, to renounce, or to turn away from entirely. It is the feeling of David that God has deserted him in today's lesson. Cry of the Forsaken from Psalms 22, verses 1 through 5. And in these passages, David pleads to God for help in a desperate situation. He says, my God, why have you left me alone? Why is my help so far away? He says, I'm crying out in great pain. He says, I call out aloud to you for help every day, all day and night. But he says, you do not answer my prayers, so I cannot sleep. I know that you are the holy God. You sit on the throne as king, and Israel people praise you. Our ancestors trusted in you. When they trusted you, you saved them. They called aloud to you, and you saved them. They trusted in you, and you did not disappoint them. So in spite of his agony, David is still recognizing that God is truthful and that he is faithful. So he is just pleading for that faith and mercy from God. Trust in the Lord is our second and final summary point for today's lesson, and it comes from Psalm chapter 22, verses 6 through 11. And in these passages, the psalmist expresses sorrow, loneliness, and the abuse related to his condition. And it is a result of his enemies tormenting him. He says that the people insult me. They think that he's worth nothing. And he says that he's less than a worm and he's less than a man. He feels like a worm and that he's less than a man. And he says that the people laugh at him and shake their heads. And he says they mock him by saying he should trust in the Lord. The Lord should save him. If the Lord is really happy with him, the Lord should rescue him from his condition. So they are mocking him. And then he says, Lord, you brought me safely to birth, and you took care of me from my mother's womb. And he says, from the day that I was born, I have always been in your care. You have been my God since my mother gave birth to me. So he is pleading with God and recognizing that God has kept him and acknowledging to God how good God has been to him. And he says, so do not stay far from me now. Trouble is near me and there's nobody to help me. So when trouble is near, God is always there. We just have to have the faith to remain with our trust in God and see it through. This is Brother Ron with the Sunday School Summary for Sunday, October the 13th, 2024. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed week, and we hope to see you next Sunday for another edition of Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron.